So, in regard to declarations of interest, members must leave the chamber or end the call remotely. Item 3 will be taken in private at the end of the meeting, and prior to moving into private, participants other than the relevant officer and members will be asked to leave the meeting. Finally, a reminder that the meeting is being live streamed and recorded, and a recording will be made available on the caller's website following the meeting. I will now move on to some good news stories. Castle Bay School. Castle Bay School is privileged to have been gifted a 3D topological map of Barra and Vatersay from Graham Lloyd Blunt and Ewan Brown, the owners of Shulacan near the airport. The map took a year to make and has been painted in graphite. This is an incredibly generous donation to the school, and members of the local community are invited to go and see the map for themselves. Tong School. Tong School have received the Sports Scotland Gold Award following an incredible effort from pupils, staff, parents and partners. Stornoway Primary School. Stornoway Primary School's anti-bullying ambassadors have received their first Wellbeing Badge from the Diana Award in recognition for their work in supporting the health and well-being of all pupils through their anti-bullying campaigns. The Eco Committee have led the Learning for Sustainability Action Plan, and the school has received its first Eco Schools Green Flag Award from Keep Scotland Beautiful. Blacksdale School. Blacksdale School have received the Sports Scotland's Gold Award for the second time. A lot of work goes into achieving this standard in sport, and all the pupils participated enthusiastically. The school council from last session worked efficiently alongside Eric McLeod from Active Schools and teacher Lorraine Morrison to complete the submission. So congratulations to all the schools on receiving those awards. So just before we start, I just want to welcome Donald McLeod to his new position as Chief Officer of the Education Committee, Education, Sport and Children's Services, and we look forward to working alongside you, Donald. So everyone's familiar with you, and you're familiar with everybody else, but the new challenges. So we'll see how things go. Right, thanks a lot. And also, I'd just like to wish, I know Councillor Grant Fulton, who's a member of this committee, has been ill for quite some time, and we just want to wish him a speedy recovery and just hope he's back with us soon. Thanks. So, minutes. The minute of the meeting of June 13th, 2020 for approval. Approval? Thanks a lot. Declaration of interest. Members are asked to declare any interest that they have in any item on the agenda. It would be helpful if members express why they are declaring an interest in the item concerned. Members in the chamber, please do so now by pressing your microphone or remotely through Teams by using the raise hand function. No declarations, not at the moment anyway. Right. Please ensure that declaration is repeated prior to the relevant item and you adhere to the protocols previously indicated. So, Children's Services, the following item will be considered in private at the end of the meeting, so we'll move on to item 4. Right, item 4, Scottish Recommended Allowance for Kinship and Foster Carers. The report informs members of the new Scottish Recommended Allowance for Eligible Kinship and Foster Carers, which was agreed by the COSLA Leaders Group on the 25th of August 2023. I will ask Mr. Jack Libby to speak to the report before I open this up for any questions. Jack, thanks.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. So as you said, Chair, this report informs members of the new Scottish Recommended Allowance for both kinship and foster carers, which has been agreed with and by COSLA on the 25th of August 2023. The National Review of Care Allowance was reported in September 2018, which went on to make 12 recommendations aimed at improving the consistency and transparency of support for kinship and foster families. I suppose this forms part of the Scottish Government's wider promise to the children of Scotland, and indeed our own promise. Within this, Recommendation 3 called for the Scottish Government and COSLA to consider a Scottish Recommended Allowance for children, kinship and foster care. Allowances are currently provided by all local authorities to eligible carers. However, this is decided at a local level as opposed to a national level, and so varies across Scotland. So the introduction of the SRA provides a recommended allowance that all local authorities must pay as a minimum, although they can also choose to pay above that. And the minimum level will be kept under review at a national level, and will keep it under review at a local level also. Recommendation. So it's recommended that members note that additional funding from the Scottish Government has been made available, which is expected to be sufficient to cover the additional costs, and on this basis endorse the coastal agreement to implement the new SRA for eligible kinship and foster carers across the Western Isles. To agree to implement the SRA and ensure that local rates are reviewed as required to ensure all eligible carers receive at least the Scottish recommended allowance. And finally, to agree to implement back payments as necessary to ensure all eligible carers receive the SRA rate from the 1st of April 2023. All this being subject to receipt of confirmation of funding from the Scottish Government. Thank you, Chair, and I'm happy to take any questions.
So does anyone have any questions for Jack at all? Okay. So do members agree? Sorry, is there anyone? No, I didn't see anyone. Oh yes, sorry, Kenneth. Kenneth online. Kenneth McLean.
Hi there. It was just this came up in the press a few weeks ago in my other job. I was trying to figure out how it exactly worked. I couldn't find any information. Do you apply through the Benefits and Revenues Department in the council, or do you have to go through social work? Is it something that somebody can self-refer to, or do they have to be intimately involved in social work in the first place? There just doesn't seem to be a whole lot of information about this.
Shall I come back, Chair, on that? Okay. So, Councillor McLean, I suppose there's two types of carers, there's formal and informal. Foster carers, it's made clear at the outset, indeed, when foster carers are going through the assessment process, what the fees and allowances are for their caring functions. So that I suppose that comes as part of their function as being foster carers for the council. In terms of kinship carers, you get two types of kinship carers. You get kinship carers who are assessed by social work to carry out that function and are approved at a kinship carer panel, and they receive the allowance. You've got other kinship carers in our community, in every community, who take that function upon themselves in the absence of social work. For example, there are many families who may have to step in to care for a relative's child, and will do so. They are required to notify ourselves, so we make some basic inquiries and satisfy ourselves. Does that answer your question, Councillor McLean?
So would somebody in an informal setting be able to apply for this, or not?
So it's not strictly a case of applying for it. These families would be known to social work and would be assessed as kinship care. I take it it's kinship care specifically, Councillor McLean, you're referring to.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine. The other question was, it's noted that under the older sort of unregulated system, the collier pays less than the standard. Will the back payment go back to make up that gap? Does that make sense? Because it's meant to be backdated to the 1st of April, I believe.
In short, so I would say the COLA were probably mid-table in terms of the allowances that we paid. And the difference between our current payments and the recommended rate it's marginal, so it's not a significant increase. And yes, it will be backdated, as the report describes, to the 1st of April 2023. Thank you.
Okay, that's everything. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Kenneth. Right. So if there's no other questions, do members agree? Sorry? What's that? No, it's it going off. No. Do members agree to note the report? What's the recommendation? Do members agree to the recommendation at 3-1? Right, thank you.
Yeah.
Item 5, education provision, report by Care Inspector of Early Learning and Childcare Provision. This report details the outcomes of the caller's early learning and childcare settings engagement with the Care Inspectorate's visits from June 2022 to June 2023. Miss Mary Claire McFerguson will speak to the report before I open it up for any questions. Mary Claire, are you available? Ah, good, there she is, right.
Good morning, thank you very much. As part of the work, the Care Inspectorate regularly inspects the quality of care in our early learning and childcare services to ensure the quality standards are met. Where improvements are needed, they support services to make positive changes within the settings. The inspection criteria and quality indicators are incorporated within the quality standards. They review the quality of care and support, the quality of the environment, quality of staffing, and quality of leadership and management. And the new key areas inspected are now 4 key questions, as indicated in the report. How good is our care, play and learning? How good is our setting? How good is our leadership? How good is our staff team? And as indicated in section 6.1, over the past session, 8 settings within our local authority have been inspected as outlined within the report. And the link is there for people to have a look at those actual inspections. Improvement plans have been implemented in collaboration with the Care Inspectorate, our own management teams, staff, to identify and address requirements and recommendations. Within each of the settings, the level of support given is determined by both the services inspection grades and the report. And I'm happy to take any questions from the report.
Does anyone have any questions for Marie-Claire? Thanks, Marie-Claire. Who comes up first? So, Councillor Cal McLean.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for the report here. Looking at 6.1 in the report, we've got you find there that there is what I would call a wide spread in grades. I'm sure you would agree with that, from weak to very good. The 2 that are missing is excellent and unsatisfactory. But for service such as we provide within the education for the running of childcare, looking at this, I would say that's unsatisfactory. Would you agree?
Well, I would say that we've had no unsatisfactory.
No, but what I'm saying is I'm not saying that the unsatisfactory, but the grades that are seen, the spread, the wide spread of grading, from weak to very good.
We certainly have room for improvement across our service. Our services have been under, as you are aware, from the pandemic, under extreme pressure between staffing and the pressures of the COVID pandemic. We're working really closely with our early year support officers and managers, head teachers in our settings. Training continues to be provided. We have outlined our own quality assurance processes within our settings, and we're looking to see improvements within them.
Thanks for that. I'm glad to say that in our own in Broad Bay and Lochatua area and in Point and Stornoway, they seem to be more progressive, let's put it that way, than the other areas. But to look at, for instance, how good is our setting, to have 3 adequates, either in Lionel, Lochs and Castleby. What does that mean? How good is our setting?
That's very much looking across the environment within each of the settings. I wouldn't want to go into detail about each individual one. You can have a look at the reports from the Care Inspectorate website, and happy to have a discussion with you with regards to individual settings again.
Yeah, I'm just making a comment upon the 6.1, the gradings there, and certainly from just a cursory glance at it, it would say that there is great need for some form of intervention.
Yeah, I mean, in the case of Tarbert, and I can obviously speak about Tarbert. One of the major issue we've had there is staffing. It's been a major problem, and that's something we've been working on and trying to address. Just getting people to actually trying to get play leaders has been a real problem. And so in the case of Tarbert, that's probably the biggest problem there. That's been a real issue for us, and even just getting people to go down to Tarbert is a problem. So that's what we're working with Marie Claire now on a plan and how we can sort of improve that and get that up to scratch again, because obviously we can, it's not really good enough. So that's something we'll work on together. But for us, staffing has been a major real big problem, a major issue for especially in the more rural areas, you know. So do you want to come in, Don?
Thank you, Chair. Just to respond to what Councillor McLean is raising there and furtherance of what Mary Claire Ferguson has already said, we do aspire to get the best possible outcomes from these inspections from Care Inspectorate, but this is an area of our service that's gone through considerable expansion through the provision of 1140 hours over the last number of years, as well as what Mary Claire has already mentioned in relation to the recovery from the pandemic. The biggest significant challenge we have in this sector is recruitment, and particularly recruitment and retention from Gaelic speakers who are committing to pursuing their SVQ qualification in this area as well. And in terms of the three settings that have been assessed as adequate in terms of the physical setting itself, there are improvement plans in place for all of these settings with work scheduled for improving the physical environment in these three locations.
I'll just let him come back. Just come back in, Callum. Problem. Are you finished?
Just that I'll probably take up Mary Claire's invitation there. What I would discuss with her is equality of provision for Gaelic and for English in a preschool setting, and for English and for Gaelic. Maybe I'll discuss that with her.
Yeah, happy to do so. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Cam. Okay, thanks for waiting, Francis. Thanks
you very much, Chair. I was just going to ask in relation to the findings at 6.1, are there, and I'm sure there are, but are there plans in place for sharing the good practice locally? I mean, I note that at 5.3 it says the Care Inspectorate and the authority will work to support the setting, offering advice, guidance and sharing good practice. And I'm just wanting confirmation that activity of sharing that very good practice that's mentioned there is built into the plans.
Okay, certainly, Councillor Murray. In fact, last year, from August of last year, we introduced what we call our Teams Exchange programme, which brings together early years managers, head teachers and staff across all of our settings in the Western Isles to do exactly that. We meet on a monthly basis. There's a key area of focus that we address, and that brings together the sharing of good practice across the settings. Feedback from those sessions last year was really positive, so much so that we're repeating the process again this year. We reached out to our settings asking them to prioritise areas they'd like to share and to find out more about, and that's continuing. Our first session actually is this month on the 28th of September.
Thank you very much. Thanks for that.
Okay, thanks, Francis. Councillor Gordon Murray, who's online.
Thanks very much, Chair, and good morning, everybody. Just following on from Councillor McLean's point, I'm glad to see that there is improvement plans being put in place. And would it be an idea that councillors see the improvement plans, and so we can monitor the actions and give support or intervention when required, so that we could improve some of these scores? Would that be okay to see the improvement plans so we can monitor them?
Certainly, we can share that with you.
Well, thank you very much, Mrs. Ferguson. Thanks.
Okay, thanks a lot. There's any other questions? I don't see anybody else. So let me put the glasses back on because I can't read it otherwise. So do members agree to the recommendations at 3.1? Right, thank you. So we'll move on to item 6. Attainment Board, General Education and SQA Performance 2023. This report, the reported item 6 of the agenda, provides a summary of attainment performance and outcomes in the broad general education P1 to S3 and senior phase S4 to S6 in the 2022-23 session. Mr. Don McLeod will speak to the report before I open up for discussion. Thanks, Don.
Thank you. I'm Gyuri Kenja going to line fixing sa client na der hangach mas tosh mi as galig. Wel dit me lianting ar am as galig jydach yn mi gyori cyng hael dyn i mach a hil laina dyn y ceinjach yn si client yn dyd mi gra. Nima. Kema, jan mi arm. Na is gesio tot fysach da feil mae jen 3 toins yn gyma cwtymach yn ag yn aim sy'n gan y fliwna. Ha 3 toins yn ac yn 3 ras as y na is gesio. Hier toins se colony on a curriculum for excellence and curriculum sy'n sar fahus ac clas hyn, clas cehirs, clas siech as y fwynsgol agos clas 3 as an art school. Mae'r chanas at as y fiola yn broad general education. As sy'n colony a teacher yn genw obyr scholar nas na bliwn i chyn sy'n. Yn arna twy eisiau hacyn i'r ast a chyn ysdech yn na eisiau sio se fysach torian tro uterus Christianis na halapa ac ira nasianta coig ac yn ardira agus ac sar ardira for diachin na chai ynu ac na betrai as y fliwna. So fysach torian chai mach gysgolchin mi as a chai. Yn dri o twysh hacking se twysh nasianta tro SDS twysh compartach as fliwnal a SDS y gianu uterus nir fat rioch tot sgrwydych deatachart ga skolarin for Siar blwn y diac go neg diac blwn y geis dyn mach cadw fel at re falym treinach no cosnech ag eisiau twysh gyma cwtrymach a sio gainia son dyn y ceinjach gael nog diacin dyn just fat tu sgol na as jay sgol. Tos i mi leis yng Ngholynach as a VGE a clas hyn, clas case, clas siech agos on clas 3 as an art school. Ac pwynt ga pwynt ga a ffysig sy'n mae un arfyn son arfoch gael litroch gaelig agos biodd yr horti cheile agos sy'n y sialtyn gael wchgyd siech pwynt y cwyd gas i chiad yn eisiau y ffain na harfyn bachor gaif re y sgil nasianta on arfoch agos litroch agos sy'n yr eri ffo wchgyd sa 3 pwynt ga yn nŵri agos siech sia pwynt ga yn bliwn yr onisyn. So a sy'n i'r ffigyn ardach y fôr on colonach as a fwynsgol as na 3 bliwn ich as a fwynsgol agos ac clas 3 as an art school. Agus a barach fysach as yn aisg on pwynt sia hyn agos sia ga a tot fysach mae un na harfyn ymliwna haris yn y cwsbarin agos na bliwn ich hyn agos cwdioch yn aharach a hair y hyn bosyn fo na harfyn ymliwna gwn na harfyn y facyn y nŵri ac pwynt sia ga. Cwdioch gas yn aisg ca fysach mae un clawn har yn hwgal on y bochgych se cwsbag yma dwi'n eisiau sio gainia has yn tics gael bochgych ffag yn heilan yn acyn agos cho cwtymach ha taik hort gan noi cri agos a ffys cwdioch gas yn aisg mae un arfyn colnach son yn mwy yn clania has yn cwdioch. Dol yr ard gan yn arna twysh se tori'n on y diachnion fwy uterus Christianis na halapa. Haris i'r nasianta coig agos i'r ardira fa na harfyn ac yn y ffain tori'n bad bac yn y bard yna na harfyn ach yn nasianta. Ac harsyn y ffigyn gro arfyn na biosol on y sar ardira as as ni gwbl ysgolchin yr ast son sgrwyd ag yn na harfyn sy'n. Chanel na harfyn yw afsach môr a chad y dol sias agos as ni tor sgrwyd ag ymag i ar y tachart haris yn y ceir sgolchin re arfyn sar ardira. Agos as yn 3 twysh a hacyn se twysh comparstach is fliwnol agos a ffysach as yn aisg mae un sy'n ac sia pwynt sia diag agos as ni'r ffigyn sydd yn gymach gydrymach a sio gain a ffigyn arfyn y geiri ffo bliwna go bliwna lysgolaren ffo sia blwn y diag gwna i diag blwn y diag ardys y gennym le fi gweld parst on y ffalym, on y treinig agos on y cosnich. Agos si cosnich rydw gymach cwtymach ein as na helanin, sgisio fas na harfyn as yn habl as yn ffwynig sy'n dyna bwyd ag oed i hacyn cosnich ac yn eisiau sy'n haris ydw dy tachart parst yn gan y rioch. So mi tolis cwestiwn sy'n mi i gweld ffo bail mi un ffysach has yn aisg.
Okay, thanks, Donald. Does anybody have any questions? Right, Councillor McLean.
Thanks, Chair. I don't want to bring up too much of this, but it's encouraging to see the percentage change from 2022 in table 6.2 there, where we have an increase in everything, and some of that is quite large actually. At P7 for Aishigis, Lovert and the Gaelic, it's 10.5%. So it's really encouraging to see that the improvement in it. One thing that I have is actually where it is in 6.8, and the percentage of CFE where there are pupils in receipt of PEF, Pupil Equity Fund. I see there is no data because the cohort in S3, because the cohort is smaller, but yet there is figures for primary 1, primary 4, primary 7, and yet there is none in S3. I just can't understand why the cohort is so small in S3 when it's not small in P1, P4, and P7 to get figures. Maybe there's a reason for that. If you could enlighten me on that one.
I can just someone switch off the mic and that's it, thanks. Because it's not coming in. Too many mics. I can someone just switch off. Yeah, that's it. Okay, thanks. I'll take a note anyway. I'll know who's next.
Fracyn mi as y fiole ar Sansio. The main reason for the suppression of the data at S3, Councillor McLean, is that there are less than 5 young people within Gaelic medium education that are in receipt of Pupil Equity Fund, and there are 2 main drivers for that. We have approaching 50% uptake in Gaelic medium education, which has particularly grown over the last number of years, but that cohort is predominantly still sitting within primary education, and there are less numbers in secondary in general within Gaelic medium education. Secondly, the predominant identifier for entitlement to Pupil Equity Fund is through free school meal allocation, and free school meal rates do tend to drop off in secondary. And as such, for children who are in Gaelic medium education in secondary that are in receipt of Pupil Equity Fund, the numbers are too small to publish because there are less than 5 across the authority. So it's to do predominantly with the classifications that are set nationally for eligibility for Pupil Equity Fund. It's important to note as well that I can't share the raw data here because of the public nature of the document, but a significant proportion, a significantly greater proportion of pupils in receipt of Pupil Equity Fund have sit within our English medium population, and there may be socio-economic factors relating to that, where possibly parents who have made positive decisions around Gaelic medium education come from generally more supported backgrounds. That's not something I would typically stereotype around, but that there are reasons that we have to investigate in terms of why the predominant identification of Pupil Equity Fund sits within English medium education. And that's in the application of the definitions provided by Scottish Government for entitlement to Pupil Equity Fund, the predominant one being, as I mentioned, free school meals.
So, sorry, Chair. The second question I have is in relation to 6.1 is regarding numeracy. I see that particularly in P4 and P7, it's down at 76 and down at 84, whereas that is possibly over a period of 10 or so years, a significant drop. I think Western Isles schools used to be very, very high in numeracy. I don't know, maybe is there something for that? Just making a comment on that one.
Oh, sorry, yes, I'm looking at the figures and stuff, sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor McLean. Looking at our own 10-year trends for attainment, numeracy has always performed a little lower than literacy, although it may be historically prior to that, it was higher. Importantly for us, we have been focusing on numeracy improvement and literacy improvement. The predominant work on improvement in the last year, in 22-23 did focus more so on writing, which is why you may see some significant improvements in percentages in writing. And it does mention in, I'm just trying to find the paragraph, it mentions it in paragraph 6.4, it discusses some of the writing improvements we have there. So based on our 21, 22 and 22, 23 data, the focus clearly was on improving writing, which was our lowest area of attainment. Now that we're seeing improvement in writing, then we will likely begin to shift the focus onto numeracy, and have been doing that on an individual basis with some schools where they have particular areas of improvement in numeracy, and we're aiming to move that wider. But I would also note that in the table in 6.2, in all stages, that is an increase in performance in numeracy. It may not be as much of an increase as we would want to achieve, but it is heading in the direction that we wanted to head, and there's improvement in every stage for numeracy.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm going to finish at this one. It's just, first of all, it's very encouraging to see the post-education, the levels that we've got of that is positive outcomes when it comes to pupils going on to further to after education. That is really encouraging, and I commend the department for that. Going back then to 610 and 611 is to do the SQA, and I've brought this probably up before in previous meetings, is it seems to be a downward trend, sadly, in the passes at higher, particularly at advanced higher. It's very obvious they're down to 66.7%. Maybe there's something there that they're not moving on to advanced higher, rather they're staying at higher level. But where we are gauging ourselves as very similar to the Scotland A to C pass rate, or whatever pass rate is, the average Scot, and we're sitting around it, whereas years gone by we used to be very much higher. I would say it's a matter of concern. I don't know if you would agree with that, Chair.
Yep, that's something we're always looking at. Yeah, as you say, it's higher, but obviously we want to try and get it as high as we can. So that's something we'll just continue to work on. Is there anything you want to say, Don?
Yes, thank you. It is obviously an area of concern and close monitoring for us as well. We have today the publication of the Insight National Benchmarking Tool, which will become available to our schools later today and to the local authority. And we will be analysing with our secondary schools across each subject and presentation to make sure that children are in the right courses and that their presentation policies are appropriate and correct. In our analysis of the raw data that's made available to us in August from the publication of qualifications and results, we've identified that overall performance in S4 is strong and well above national average, but there are issues around particularly presentations at National 5 Higher and Advanced Higher across S5 and S6 that we're working with all 4 schools on to try and make sure that we address that. The issues around Advanced Higher are very much recognised, what Councillor McLean has highlighted there. The overall number of presentations is low and has been declining, although it did increase by 4 last year. It was down from about 100 in previous years, so that's about 20% drop. There's more emphasis for young people increasingly on having a wider portfolio of qualification leaving school rather than a depth of qualification through an advanced higher. Also, in the 2023 presentations, there were a number of issues around the presentation policies of schools based on the young person's previous results at higher and decisions made about them progressing to advanced higher, which may have affected overall pass rates. Having consulted with colleagues in other island authorities, the trends that they have seen are broadly similar to what we have in terms of where the range of qualifications are sitting, and it is something that we're looking closely with colleagues in Orkney and Shetland as well to try and identify key areas for improvement.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Right, so we'll move on, and I think it's Councillor Francis Murray was next. So thanks again for being patient. A very patient person.
Thank you. On the surface, maybe. Thank you very much, Chair. Just a few points. First one on the PEF pupils. I note at 6.5 that the national attainment data isn't out yet, but I'd be interested to know where we sit generally in terms of our attainment gap, which is measured here at 21.4% and 6.8. It'd be interesting to know just at this stage if we're around the same as national. Just for adding to what the Chief Officer has said in terms of the small numbers in third year Gaelic medium, and another factor that I know from a previous life to bear shot on this is they have to be studying Gaelic, fluent Gaelic in third year for them to be measured here, or else either history or modern studies, another subject where they do enough reading and writing to count. So that's a sort of a significant factor as well, I suppose, in taking the numbers down. I also wanted to very much congratulate everybody involved in these positive destination figures, because they've been achieved at a difficult time. I know it's difficult nationally, but I think the schools, whether it's the guidance teachers, the management, the partner agencies such as SDS, the Career Service, they really know their young people when they're leaving school, and they leave no stone unturned to make sure that there's a positive destination. It's really interesting to see our employment figures compared to national. Of course, that means that there's perhaps fewer going into education, but surely it's a good thing if they go to employment rather than go off to university just because everybody else is, and then find themselves dropping out 3 months later. I think that knowledge of what's right for the young person and looking at the different progression paths into post-school is something that's done really well by our secondary schools and all the partners and agencies that support them. Thanks.
Thanks, Russ. Do you want to comment?
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, in response to Councillor Murray's first point, overall, since we first started tracking attainment gap, our first measures of this at the inception of Pupil Equity Fund in, I think, 2018, 2019, the attainment gap was up approaching 40%. So although it was up a little bit compared to 2022 in our own data, it was a different cohort of young people. So it's not the same cohort being measured again. The 19.8% mentioned in paragraph 6.8 was from the 2022 P147 and S3. This data from the 2023 P147 and S3. So it's a different cohort of young people with different socioeconomic factors affecting them. But it is a thing that we track closely. In response to Councillor Murray's other question, the key area where we can track that will be in our National Improvement Framework report, which has to be concluded by the end of September for submission to Scottish Government, and will come as a complete report to the next sitting of this committee in November. And in that meeting, we'll be able to provide some further information around that. However, the Scottish Government doesn't publish broad general education attainment data every year until the December, once it's been through its various quality assurance checks. So if we have it in time for that series, we'll be able to provide it, but we will be able to do some degree of benchmarking to other areas for the first year this year at that meeting in November, because all the different authorities will be publishing their second iteration of their stretch aims within the National Improvement Framework. That will allow us to see the picture across the nation. So we'll include that in the report to the November series.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Sorry, just finish off. Yeah, okay.
Apologies, Chair. I was also going to mention in terms of what Councillor Murray said about 616 and the positive figures in our annual participation measure, which we very much welcome. There were 2 points that I wanted to make around that. Firstly, the growth in the percentage of our young people in employment at the age of 16 to 19 from 24.3% pre-pandemic to 30.8% this year. And I think that is an important statistic for us in terms of the growth of our applied learning pathways in school, and to some degree I move away from the traditional measure of 5+ hires to meaningful qualifications for young people to move into employment, which predominantly will be retaining that employment locally within the Western Isles, and how that then feeds into our population retention of particularly young people. And I think that is an important local statistic for us and an indicator of keeping our young people in meaningful employment locally here. Our challenge is to make sure that the quality and sustainability of that employment is maintained. The one other point I wanted to make, and it'll be another report that we will take to the November series, is the National Reform in Education at the moment and the publication of the Withers report, which does propose some significant changes in this area and the possible dissolution of STS and the establishment of a national career service. So there may be implications for how this data is gathered and reported in future years. And we'll take a report on all aspects of the national reform agenda to the November series. Consultations are ongoing about that at the moment, and schools have to submit views and consultation responses back to Scottish Government by the end of October. And we'll be collating these locally too, and we'll take to the November series of the committee.
Okay, thanks, Donald. I think it's Ray's even more patiently waiting, so thanks, Ray.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, it's a bit like a game show here. I think you want to press the button. I'm not quick enough on the.
I know this is
button.
what I say, not
Down
quick
a
enough.
bit high, and then I don't get in at all. But actually, it has an advantage in that most of my questions have already been answered. So the same points seem to come up. And I would mention I agree with the 616 there, which is very positive. And each year over the last 5 years, it shows that we're higher than national with ultimate destinations. The one thing I couldn't understand on the answers was that with regard to the advanced higher, I wouldn't have thought that having a small amount of presentations would affect the percentage, because it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it's still 76%, whereas, it's 81% national. So it doesn't really matter if it's a smaller amount of advanced hires. It's still the same percentage. And, obviously, you're looking into that.
Okay, Donald,
yeah, just to clarify for Councillor Mackenzie on that, I maybe wasn't clear enough. I was making probably two separate points in my response previously. The first was that we have seen just an overall reduction in young people choosing to take advanced hires, resulting in a lower number of presentations over recent years. But rightly, that doesn't necessarily have too significant a bearing on the overall pass rate. The references I made to presentation policies and results from hires being used to determine pathways into advanced hire was more the factor that we're looking at in terms of the pass rates. Although I do need to note, obviously, that a smaller numerical cohort does mean larger statistical differences in percentages. Not necessarily accounting for this change, I accept that, but it is generally where there are smaller and smaller cohorts that can result in larger percentage variations. But that doesn't at all justify or explain away the difference that we're talking about here. And it is a matter that we're looking at with schools for their advanced higher presentation policies and course teaching and assessment as well.
Okay, thanks, Donald. And I think George Murray online. Thanks for being patient, George. Thanks for your patience.
I'm a very patient man. I wanted to ask Donald, any word on the withdrawal of mathematics, higher mathematics and higher biology from Surrey Scott School? What's the story that I'm just hearing a rumour?
I'm not aware of that, Councillor Murray, of the withdrawal of higher courses. Certainly not higher maths, which would be a core subject, as would higher sciences. It's something I can investigate, but it's not a matter that's been brought to my attention before the meeting today.
Great. I'm gratified to hear that. Delighted. I wouldn't want to see that being withdrawn.
No. Okay, thanks, George. Thanks. And Councillor John A. McKeever.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not a member of the committee. I welcome this report and I'm delighted to see that it highlights the benefits of Gaelic medium education, that the percentage increases higher in the vast majority of cases. And I think it's a report that could be used to encourage parents to put their children through Gaelic medium when they're new entrants. Thank you.
Thanks, John A. Right, so if there are no more questions, do members agree to the recommendation to note the report? Sorry. Yep.
Yes.
Oh, go on then. Go on quickly.
I'll
Very,
come
very
I'll
quickly.
come in, and maybe it's got no relevance to this in one sense, but one of the things that I'm going to make a comment about is in the primary education is an overcrowded curriculum. And I'm sure the director will agree with that, and I'm sure there's been moves to do that, to slim down that. One question I do have is in regard to what probably we've been missing out on for the last year or 2 years, is the term Confucius education in schools. And I take it that 2 schools are involved, if I'm correct. It's Donaway Primary and Leenaclet. And I'm just wondering, where could we get a report as to what is happening regarding this? I take it it's still going on. That is the, I don't know what we would call it. Some of us would call it different things, but it's Chinese education system through Strathclyde University. But it's happening in 2 schools in our, what impact that is having, or whatever should that be included in our attainments, or how long has it been going on for? Maybe, Chair, we could do with a report as to what is going on in these 2 schools.
Thank you, Councillor McLean. I'll maybe address, I know it was just a comment in terms of your comment on the curriculum, but I would just note that there is some significant curriculum reform happening nationally at the moment, and a sense of a move away from the term curriculum for excellence to Scotland's curriculum, and there's a major curriculum development programme being led in Education Scotland at the moment by Joan Mackay from our own shores. And we have an officer who'll be participating in that work across the next 12 months to make sure that we're fully abreast of the latest developments in curriculum design. And there is some recognition of aspects of crowded curriculum and a need for reform in that area. So we will be a part of that process. In terms of the Confucius hubs and education through Confucius, I'll need to double check that a report hasn't come to members previously on this when it was established. But if members wish to, we can certainly take a report or an update report to the next series in relation to that work in these schools.
Yeah, interesting just to see that. Okay, thanks for bringing that up, Cam. Thanks. Right, we'll move on to item 7. It's got eSchool Impact Report 2022-23. The next report details the eSchool impact for the session 2022-23. Stephen Graham will speak to the report and answer any questions. Is Stephen here? Right, Stephen, thank you. Thanks for waiting. Thanks.
Tábla, Hanna Lachko, bhí seáinniu cólarah gus ahisk eSchool chud a dhird, mar a híisiú eSchool a gopad cólar I Scotland gus tuí chorman a hort ga clown ag gach ide sas gach coisnach a feig alabe. Chai evidence of impact report is scalig and as an ogvias is Sean Evliana Davila Fichitsa 3 agus a hyperlink hicke ri ein imrain na hahish geha sho. An the sin Yoshi Emmerich na hadavi goalache hadish at na program in Gillied agus Kujoch Yoshi Jarabig at the Vuai eveki at Scotland agus Scotland Chanyevain sho as na Helenan ach fegalabe. Get that eSchool of skille gavi na vutnashente shan sho as na Helenan na Wiabichen. So sinna kielch grenadar the economic asset hanna eSchool gan chorle is hishu van an arna appendix mar hanna millianen the vichinistach hadish na 3 billion a chashachet. Smar chai corith 0.6 million yenishen chavor a garnelje a chosk sho as a skida ag in hin. Hishu mar had dinge kostnig tro eSchool va nish as ich hanna tua shiasko elan bater sei gujes. Spechil an tank hort gaivd mar veil is an ar taik agus kuchach hadish at na blianich in a chashachet. Sami in duels nachas gengoshu rishin na heiska sho sami jonoch jelig ikli question sami the chuspa in the rasta.
Okay, thanks a lot, Stephen. Does anybody have any questions? Oh, Callum.
I was hoping that somebody would come in before me. I think there's somebody else. I think
Donald. We'll let Don go in first.
Donald, I'm
So,
hugging.
Councillor Don Cryan.
Let me Carol and you mean na ma and a committee I'm just good father Miawan ook team eScholar son Roper had er janu Harish in Bjornchen such Finken Jarabich in Danshin
rwyd cast yw'r isgol yr fwg, wyt yn ffasg corridor briwn yn as. Oes sy'n taigl y son yna ha cwtwch eich cwawn han I fan cyhynodol ach ffygyrio yw'r cwawn ffain chodym ffyrwm tron y bian a sio. Oes cwtwch mwy economicoch har y fiawn y hyf isgol ha sy'n cwtrwm cwtwch as a sy'n noch ysgrifennu sy'n parish yn y briwn sy'n parish yr briwn sy'n ar hosach hon yn eich sy'n cwtwch bwys ag ffyrwm oes yn economi ac yn tron y fian sŵnich a sio.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Donald. Okay, so Councillor McLean.
Thanks. Chair. I would endorse what Councillor Crichton has said there. From being a sceptic about the initial e-school, we can see that there has been a great deal of progress and a great deal of, as we see, development and what we've got out of it. It's been very good and very helpful to schools and to communities, and the far reaching, the far reach it's having is another thing. When you look at the map on Appendix 5, and which I'm going to refer to, I've always come down, after I praise something, I'm always coming with a but you'll excuse me for the but. It's to do with Appendix 5, where it gives the NQ results of 2022-23. And to be quite honest with you, they're to be commended particularly in Gaelic learners. Gaelic learners is there, you've got 32 of them achieving a national 5, I think it is, yeah, and higher 17. But when it comes to Gaelic, there's a little bit less. And I'm just wondering why is it that we've got such a high number in Gaelic learners, but where we come to the Gaelic, we've got Advanced Higher Gaelic 3, which is very commendable in that sense, but Higher Gaelic 5 and National 5 Gaelic 3. I don't know why it's the numbers. There's a discrepancy in the numbers. What they are. I'll just put a question to you, Mr. Graham.
Thank you, Councillor McLean. What you see there in Appendix 5 is aggregated figures for adults and school pupils. And I think what the figures are telling us that there's more demand for the Gaelic Learners course. Now, the Gaelic Learners course takes place both in the daytime for school pupils and in the evening for adults, whereas our Gaelic fluent classes are only taking place during the daytime. And the difficulty with scheduling any class during the daytime is that you are cutting across numerous different timetables for which there is no alignment or harmonization. So when we offer a subject like Gaelic through the day and invite young people from across Scotland to be part of that, we're giving with one hand, but we are causing issues for them on the other. We might be taking them out of a period of French on a Monday, a period of English on a Tuesday, and so on. And I think one of the pieces of work we're doing at the moment is to do a mapping exercise of the harmonization that exists across the country to see if we can schedule these classes at the best possible times for young people. I suspect that the answer, I know the answer, that there's no perfect time that's going to suit everybody, but there may be timings that we could tap into that exist either across a local authority or a number of local authorities or across a regional improvement collaborative where there are moves afoot to try to bring in an element of harmonisation similar to what we have here in our own authority across the wider WIC to allow for young people to have access to a broader curriculum. But we're looking to build on these figures. We're seeing young people who have done fluent Gaelic Nat 5 with us coming back to do higher the next year again, and then on to advanced higher. And it's always there to complement whatever the local schools are able to provide. One of the pupil statistics you see there is in Shetland, and the story behind that is that a young person who'd been in the Gaelic school in Glasgow moved to Shetland and would have no access to a Gaelic fluent course within that locality, whereas they were able to then tap into the class that we were running. So we are looking to up these numbers, but we are conscious that there are barriers that young people face when it comes to taking up some of the offers that we have available.
With times of schedule during the day, yeah, but because to the purists Gaelic, and I can't say I'm a purist Gaelic, but I see one or two purist Gaelic people over here. The Gaelic native Gaelic Manachasat is one of the most important elements of Gaelic in order for it to get into the community. I'm not saying that Gaelic learners isn't important, but the more important one for many of our elderly, as I am, people, it's the Gaelic, and I see that if you're making efforts to do that, that's most encouraging.
Thanks, Callum. No one here, is there? Oh, no, I'll get Donald first. So, Councillor Don McInnes. Sorry, Duncan McInnes. It'd be nice to call you by your right name. That would be a good start, wouldn't it?
Josh Galore. Verhalem jadach gedrotova konische krijchten grad die lijn als je fin misnich moor de zijn finken in orde sa iskolle de janu agus skaharich en korte ma hound man als je klooster dort agus man als je finken hadden de saasje gan bla agus skaharich aan jogin had dolle hu galig agus massa had er bit janu en hacht die jogin had dat van de viole agus garage shuntot taich kan hoorle ha kus galig en hosoch agus kwad daar de seit van as je kwad die strategie hoorle klooster daar as je kwad die njachtige galig van as je finken agus garage fugin kan buil agus jogin a kapde so hoorle loost naart agus sulemi gel iskol na nerft gunje mat hoorle Sean has je finken na de hanid COVID doen go sin fadde toch het skieden an lappe agus ha met hasinje toch in de skieden ha me finken gel de challesin in de hade van agus geharig jo han glasgus in de biechen agus an de mianna alappe fiach ja iskol zullen me gela het je hutremach misschien tot njacht kan ga iskol Sean looster dort agus njachtige de leen man een hodesje je shit dat tot karm ga skolle dan de schaften nach hinge karmaschen en een begiskolan zullen me kel schöne schalten njachte hakken en hakle kolen som i hele agus vinskemoorde finken kare kliaterhug behoort kan be kumatet agus njachte hoort ga iskol men as looster dort.
Thanks, Duncan. Thank you. Councillor Kenneth McLean online.
Oh, I feel bad because everyone said very positive things and I'm here to spoil it. Yeah. It's just I've had many parents come to me expressing concerns about e-school in that they're afraid it's going to be I've raised this before, but I feel as though I should probably raise it each time it comes up because people keep coming to me about it. But it's going to be pulling jobs from down here and centralizing them, as well as having an impact on education, pulling physical teachers away from the more rural schools and having them elsewhere. I just feel it wouldn't be right for me not to have mentioned this because so many parents down here have come to me about it. And I think there needs to be some sort of outreach from the Comhairle to sort of ease these fears. I don't know how you'd go about that, but yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Okay. I'll maybe let Stephen come in on this as well, but in actual fact, the opposite is true in reality, where we have teachers who are living, working and based fully in Barra, but working through eSchool and being able to work on a near or at least full-time basis in Barra, where previously they may have only had a part-time timetable or maybe not had to work at all in Barra. So eSchool is actually facilitating higher levels of professional employment in rural communities such as Barra than not having eSchool would. And in addition to that, eSchool is delivering classes into Castle Bay School that wouldn't otherwise happen without eSchool. So we see this as a significant net benefit inward and outward for sort of small rural communities, particularly such as Barra. But I would let Stephen comment as well on that.
I would just largely echo much of what the Chief Officer has said, Councillor McLean. I think since eSchool's inception in 2016, we've not seen that erosion of teachers on site face to face, which would always be the preferred option. We have stepped in when there was a gap, when specialist supply wasn't available locally. And as the Chief Officer has said, we have consolidated and added to the teaching commitment some part-time members of staff have had in the Southern Isles to take them up to full-time, and we would look wherever possible to do that, to make sure that we are sustaining opportunities within our own local authority first and foremost. I agree that there are misconceptions. I am well aware of efforts that have been made in the past to reach out to communities across our own local authority to try to counter that narrative. And I think we just need to continue to share the message that we are not here to replace teachers. We're not here to dilute the learner experience, but rather to work alongside schools and to broaden the curricular experience where that is something within our gift to do, and to work in partnership with local schools to improve learner pathways and to provide a greater degree of resilience, which is not as vulnerable as it would have been otherwise in the event of staffing shortage or absences.
Okay, thanks, Stephen. Councillor Don Crichton. I'm forgetting everyone's name today. It's really true.
Thank you, Chairman. Just very briefly, another committee. Perhaps the Chief Officer can provide some clarity on this. I do recall that there was some intervention by the Scottish Government, or there was some machinations around the future of eSchool going forward, and maybe there was attempts to maybe steal some of the ideas and the concept of it to use it in a more centralized way. I just want to assure us that, you know, eSchool will remain very much part of our own authority, and at the same time being able to benefit, having a national and an international reach.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Crichton. You're right to point out that there is a commitment within the current government to establish a national digital academy, and the Cabinet Secretary visited just think before the summer holiday period and took time to go to eSchool, and in doing so we made a case with that, and we will continue to make that case that any development of a national online solution or national online academy should have eSchool at its core, and continue for that work to be based and led from the Western Isles for benefit of our own employment and our own Comhairle, but also to feed into that national offer, because ultimately eSchool is kind of already doing it. We are also recognising that other authorities have moved into the space that we have been trailblazers in establishing, and increasingly some authorities are developing their own solutions around online and digital learning as it becomes the increasing practice across the country. But it's important for us to protect eSchool. It's as is seen in the report presented by Mr. Graham, it's a hugely valuable, growing and impactful service that's making a real difference, not just to our own island learners and economy and their staff, but across the nation, and it is something that we are strongly committed to trying to keep. eSchool is significantly funded directly by Scottish Government in a lot of its work, and we have to make sure that we can maintain that funding stream, but also to move into supporting the eSchool being at the core of any development of a national academy.
Thank you, Mr. McLeod, for that clarification. I think it's important that we share our good practice on what we've learned and what we've been doing over these years. But I think it's also important that we retain eSchool's identity and our association with it going forward for the future, because it has been a standing success, and it came into zone, as Mrs. McInnes pointed out, during the pandemic, where it probably got recognised more nationally then because of what we were able to do with it during that period of time. So I think it's really important that we retain our identity, but at the same time certainly share the good practice and all that we've been able to do with partners going forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Donald. Right, so if there's no one other questions, do members agree to note the report? Thank you. Right, we'll move on to item 8. It is Library and Information Service Review Update. This report provides an update for members in relation to service improvements and restructuring proposals in relation to the review of the Library and Information Service. Neil MacLeod will provide an overview of the work carried out and is available to answer any questions. Thanks, Neil. I think you're doing a presentation as well, aren't you? Doing?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, as you say, the report provides an overview of where we are with the library service review. That fits with another report that was considered at HR Sub last week, which looked at the restructuring of the library service. And you can see that in the report it states that we have £100,000 of savings to make in the budget, and the report sets out that we wish to make this saving through the non-filling of vacant posts and savings across other library budgets, and looking for the committee approval for that approach that's been taken. Also, with the help of the Member Officer Working Group, and thanks to them for the support they've been providing throughout the last few months, we identified a number of service improvements, and they are set out in paragraph 8.1 of the report. In addition to that, at the last series, we were asked to provide an update on digitisation and how we are moving with that. And what I propose to do is just to share with you some of the work that's been done in that area, and look at the newly launched library webpage. So again, with the Chair's permission, I'll just share that just now with members, and let's try and share the right screen there. Apologies for that. There we go. So I better show that the landing screen again. For those of you who haven't been on it, that's the landing screen for the new library website. And when you go into eLibrary, which is the choice on there at the beginning, we also have eComics, which are accessed through an app called Library Pass. A lot of these things you can have as an app on your mobile device, or you can access through the website, the library website. E-newspapers just gives us access to an organisation called Newsbank, and again I've logged into that one already just to save myself putting it in. But there's numerous topics where you can go in and you can look at newspapers, publications, research on a huge range of areas. You can then as well go into, and I'll scroll down again a wee bit here, is go into e-magazines, and again you have access to a range of magazines through that website. Just come down, you can open that resource and they open in another window, and again you've got access to a really wide range of magazines across all sorts of topics that you may wish to go on. So that gives you a very brief overview just of the new website that is there. And if I scroll back up to the top, you can see the other options that are available. The different services within it are set out there, so you get lots of information about that. There's different collections, and one of the ones that is there is the dyslexia friendly one, where you look for the orange sticker, which identifies dyslexia friendly materials. And we've also got the page where it's about events and news, so that you have your library on your computer through this, and you can also book. If I go back to the home page, it gives you an update of the latest books, and this is where you can actually set aside a book or ask for it to be set aside for you. It'll tell you if it's available in the library or if it's out on loan and when you can possibly expect it. The other area that staff have been working on, and again, this is the work started off by Kathleen and been now carried forward by one of the staff called Eilean. She's done a huge amount of work on this, and I think it's important to say at the beginning that digitization, there's a lot of work involved in this in the background, a huge amount of work, and before you can actually put a piece of material on, you need to document it, catalog it properly, but you also need to sort out copyright issues to make sure that you have that legal right to put the information on. So this is the back page, if you like, or this is the administration page for a new website that's been worked on, and the website is called Eilean. It'll come up just now, and on this one, it gives you access to a range of documents. It'll give you access to community newsletters, documents, publications, images, maps, and such like. Now, this is a work in progress, so there's not a lot on it yet. But if I go into documents and publications, there's one here which is called Loose Leaves from the Loos, and this was a document that was prepared for visitors at Lewis Castle. And just move that picture out of the way, and you can go into any of the documents, you can look at it, you can enlarge it, you can scan it. Now, there will be there'll be an option to print, but if you print straight off it, there'll be a watermark on it, so you won't get a proper print. And one of the potential areas for gaining income or monetizing is to charge people for a print, so that you can actually order a print and it'll get printed at the library and sent out to you for a fee, or you can download the file of it for a fee, and that one would be given without a watermark. So that's one of the examples where we can look at monetizing that. It's going to be quite a substantial piece of work just to get this up and running, and which is one of the reasons that within the revised restructure we've tried to create a very small team who are dealing with digitization. And I was going to also show you the new structure just so that you could see where that was, and that was the diagram that was coming up first of all when I went on. So I'll just stop sharing here, and I'll share that document with you so that you can get a note set out within the HR sub report anyway. Thank you for that. And again, that gives you an idea of the work that's been done at present, where we're at, and what we're hoping to do, where we're planning to go. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks a lot, Neil. That's really, really interesting, actually. Does anybody have any questions? All right, Councillor Ray McKenzie.
I got in this time.
You got in first, yeah.
Well, I think it's fantastic what's been done there. I'm looking forward to trying to find my way through it and to look at all these different things. It's, it really will be a fantastic boon to people. And I'm sure Malcolm is beside me here. That's got his ears picked up, and the Historical Society and other historical societies will make use of it. The one thing I was going to ask actually was, before you impress me with this, what are the numbers in the library service now? Because it was 21 and then it was reduced to 14. So how many people are now?
Yeah, put your mic on, please. Can somebody switch off their mics, please? Too many. I've got to Angus next. Right, thanks. Yeah,
that's it. Yeah, the numbers have obviously reduced because of the savings that we've made. We've reduced it by non-filling of vacant posts. As I say, nobody's, no jobs have gone with people in them, but vacant posts have been disestablished. And as opportunities arose, we reduced the time, the hours per week, if you like. So we've probably lost the equivalent of about 2 full-time members of staff. But I can get the exact. I don't have the HR Self report. Oh yes, I won't show it, but I'll get that information to you about the exact numbers as we have them now.
Okay, thanks, Ray. Councillor Angus McCormack.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much, Neil, for the report. I'm not happy that you've reduced the staff, of course, but I understand that you were obliged to do it. I couldn't see the staffing schedule. Does it include a head librarian?
Yes, the HR sub report approved the release of the post of the head librarian, and I'm waiting obviously for this committee to meet and just to get the final approval for the overall the overall approach that we take, what we have in mind. But yes, we will be looking now to advertise that post as it was. Although we're looking for more of a focus on school librarian experience and working to support the curriculum is going to be a key area of this post going forward, as well as managing the service as a whole.
Thank you. I mean, that post was very important. I think that would have been very difficult to go forward without having a leadership role from somebody in the organisation. So I'm very pleased to hear that. Another question I wanted to ask in terms of digitisation. In the past, early gazettes were on microfiche. Is there any chance that they've been moved to digital by digitisation?
Again, Chair, yes, it's one of our aims. We have at the moment got copies of the Hebrides, not the Hebrides, the how did I say it again? Islands. And that's with the National Library Service. These documents are being scanned. So previous editions of the Gazette would actually be ones that we'd be looking to do. Although again, it's quite a specialised piece of work because you first of all have to prepare the papers, if you like, for scanning, and that can take quite some time to do that. And then it's a specialist scanner. Although we do have a scanner in the library that's set up and running, the documents that size would be much more challenging for us to do. So normally A4 size will be absolutely fine with the scanner that we have, but that will again need to be dealt with professionally and sent away. But absolutely, it's the way forward in terms of making the collections available to the widest possible area. It's definitely the way to do it. As I say in the report, we're working closely with the Archives Service to look at identifying documents that are of significant importance that we should be archiving and looking after, but also looking at digitising them and making them available.
Okay, thanks. Thanks. I'd like to go to Councillor George Murray's online because I know you've been
Thank
waiting
you.
a while, George. Thanks, George.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to commend the library staff. Absolutely fabulous service. And I remember as a wee boy, a very wee boy, with a counter way up above my head, going to see these kindly librarians and these kindly people, and giving me a love of books, which I've retained to this day. So thank you very much to you all for giving me this service. I love Libby, by the way. Libby is just fabulous. Thank you.
Thanks, George. Thank you. Right, I'll just go to the convener next, and then.
Okay,
Malcolm.
thank you very much, Chair, and I welcome this report. And just following on from what Councillor McCormick was saying about the digitisation of the Stornoway Gazettes, I think it's very important because, like my colleague Malcolm here, I've been, researching back in the Gazettes for nearly 40 years, and they've deteriorated a lot over, the last since I started in 1986 researching there. So I think it's important that we try and digitize them, and also, that I know that the bound copies that were in the cassette of us have now moved to the library, thankfully. So that should make it easier to digitize. Also, there's a lot of private collections from Islanders in the National Library of Scotland. Would there be any chance of maybe getting stuff like that, speaking to the National Library and getting it digitized and moving it, having it in Stornoway as well? Is that a possibility, Neil?
So yeah, it's certainly something we could look at. If it's digitized, it would be available for us anyway. So if the National Libraries of Scotland actually digitize any information like that, then we would usually have access to it. If it's the originals we were looking at, then that would depend on, have we got the proper archiving arrangements for it, and then the storage facilities for these. But it's certainly something that we can look into and investigate.
Okay, thanks, Don. Malcolm. Yeah, leave your mic on. That's it. Yeah.
Could ask Mr. MacLeod, has he considered approaching the various local history societies, Comhairle, with regards to a lot of material they hold that could be useful for educational resources?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, thanks, Mr. MacDonald. One of the areas for improvement that we are looking at is working much more closely, or as closely as we can, with the historical societies, like Stornoway Historical Society, and see what we can do and how we can work more in partnership as we go forward. Absolutely.
Right. I think there's no more questions. I don't think there's any more questions. Do members agree to the recommendations at 3.1? Agree. Thanks a lot. Right, we'll move on to item 9, Volunteer Centre Western Isles. This report seeks approval for the payment of grant for 2023-24 to the Volunteer Centre Western Isles. Fiona McInnes-Begg will speak to the report and answer any questions. And is Fiona around? She's not around. It's Donald, so it'll be Donald instead. Thanks.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I need to explain to the committee today that Fiona McInnes-Begg was called away at very short notice to another meeting today and had expected to be able to be at your committee sitting today, but was now unable to do so. So I'll just speak to the report briefly on her behalf. This is a report that comes annually to the committee, seeking the authority of the Comhairle to provide a continuing grant of £22,000 to support the work of Volunteer Centre Western Isles as part of the local third sector interface. They are a key member of their continuing relationship through CLD and the community in terms of supporting volunteering and recruitment of volunteers across the Western Isles. They've got a broad Western Isles footprint from the Butt to Barra and are really important to the continuing work of CLD and supporting various different functions across their communities. So the report provides information on the work that has been undertaken already in the past year with the Volunteer Centre, and on the basis of that and the submission of a satisfactory work plan by the Volunteer Centre as a requirement of the grant, we ask for the recommendation of the Comhairle to support the continuing payment of this grant up to the 31st of March 2024.
Great. Right. So thanks a lot. So we'll move on to item 10, Service Continuity Plan, Housing Support for Vulnerable Young People. This report seeks approval for Children's Services to assume responsibility for the housing supporting services previously provided by the FOIA project. Again, I would ask Jack Libby to speak to the report before I open up the discussion to any members. Thanks, Jack.
Thank you, Chair. So the report in front of members today explains the moves that have taken place recently in terms of children's services assuming responsibility for supported living accommodation and outreach services for vulnerable people within our community. For a period of time now, sadly, we've had a small number of young people having to be in receipt of housing provision through adult homeless services. By that I mean the acres. So this move is a significant and welcome progressive step in terms of providing a different type of service where they're not living alongside adults, sadly, who have of an older age and have more deep-rooted and progressive issues, for example, through alcohol, substance abuse, and more prolonged mental health issues. So we have taken on a residential property in Stornoway Centre. It only required some minor alterations to allow it to fit the purpose lightly. It's staffed through our extended learning resource. I suppose the history is, and the context is that FOIA project used to deliver a service of this type, which they intimated some months back that they were not continuing to do so, and the need was there and somebody had to do so. Fortuitously, some of our extended learning resource staff had experience in providing outreach housing support, and they have stepped in to fill this void. Currently, it is a facility for 2 young people, but with some further and minor alterations to the building, we'll be in a position very quickly to take a 3rd person into that facility. And the longer term plans are to acquire 2 flats that are currently under the management of our homeless service that sit upstairs from our facility. So we'll have a step up, step down provision which can accommodate up to 5 vulnerable young people. It's important that we have such a service for all vulnerable young people, but particularly in terms of keeping our promise to the Scottish Government and to our young people who are care experienced, an abrupt transition from being in care to owning their own tenancy for too long and too often was unsuccessful for clear and obvious reasons. They do need, like our own children will do when they make that transition from childhood to adulthood. My own aren't quite there yet, but looking around the chamber, I'm going to hazard a guess on this year in the chamber that have had this experience where the support children require from their parents goes far beyond childhood and into adulthood, and well into adulthood in some respects. So the recommendations are set out in the report, and I commend this report to members. I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thanks, Jack. Does anybody have any questions? No. So do members recommend the report at 3-1? Thank you. Right. So items outstanding. Item 1 was included in the National Improvement Framework report that went to committee in November 2022 and will be a standing item at each November committee meeting going forward. Item 3 will form a standing item on the agenda each June, and item 4 is before you today. Do members agree to note the report? Councillor Ray.
Yeah, it may be coming up at some point in the next week or this week. But could we have a statement on the current position regarding rack concrete and our schools affected in any way?
Yeah, thanks, Ray.
Yes, I can clarify that the last statement provided to members by circulation was and remains the current position. There are ongoing investigations from building colleagues at the moment on buildings that fit the time period where RAC may be used, but it continues to be the position from the Comhairle that our investigations and all the information we hold about our buildings is that RAC is not present in any of them. It has never been found in any building in any previous assessments. It's never been found in any scoping or undertaking of improvement works in any buildings. So whilst investigations are ongoing to provide 100% certainty, we continue to believe it to be the case that it's not present in our school buildings.
Okay, thanks, Ray. Right, so the next scheduled meeting of the committee, will be on the 28th of November 2023. So the people are still in public. So we're going to move into private now and consider item 3. So can we do that, please?